The war ended, but the battle never truly did. The world remembered the day Voldemort fell, the moment Harry Potter walked out of the wreckage of the Great Hall, victorious yet hollow-eyed, surrounded by the ghosts of those who had fallen. They called him a hero, the savior of the wizarding world, the boy who lived not once but twice. But as the celebrations faded, as the statues of honor were erected, and the Ministry rebuilt itself atop the ashes of war, Harry Potter disappeared. No one could say exactly when it happened. Some claimed he left quietly in the night, unable to bear the weight of a world that now expected him to heal what had been broken. Others believed he had set out on a final mission, chasing the remnants of Voldemort's influence until there was nothing left to hunt. Some whispered darker things, that he had gone mad, that the horrors of war had unraveled him from the inside out, and that the boy who had cheated death too many times had finally surrendered to it. But the truth, as it often was in Harry's life, was far less grand than the myths. One part narrative, the lonely road of the chosen one, the rain fell in slow, lazy sheets against the roof of the quiet, unassuming inn at the edge of the Scottish Highlands. Inside, the fire crackled weakly in the hearths, embers casting long shadows across the wooden floors. The inn was nearly empty, save for a handful of travelers who paid no mind to the man who sat hunched in the corner, nursing a tankard of fire whiskey that he barely touched. His hair was longer now, unkempt and tangled, the lightning bolt scar hidden beneath overgrown strands of black. His glasses, cracked along one lens, rested lopsided on the bridge of his nose. He had once been Harry Potter, but the man who sat here tonight was simply Henry Evans, a nameless drifter who left no footprints behind. It had been 3 years since he had walked away from everything. 3 years since he had stood before the ruined walls of Hogwarts, staring at the graves of those who had died for him, for a prophecy he had never asked for. 3 years since he had last seen Ron or Hermione, since he had turned his back on the world that had built him into a savior and then expected him to keep saving it. He had tried at first. The Ministry had offered him everything. An honored position, a place in shaping the new world. But every corridor of that place reeked of blood and war. Every face that smiled at him carried the weight of expectation. Be our hero, be the man who fixes everything. Harry had nothing left to give, so he left. He drifted from town to town, never staying long, never allowing himself to become more than a passing shadow in the lives of those he encountered. He took on odd jobs where no one recognized him, fixing roofs, tending bar, working in muggle shops where no one spoke his name. He learned to disappear, to fade into the background, but some ghost never let go. The door to the inn creaked open, letting in the cold wind and the scent of damp earth. Harry tensed before he even turned his head. Some instincts never dulled, even in years of self-exile. The man who stepped inside was wrapped in a thick traveling cloak, his hood drawn low, but Harry knew him before he even saw his face. Neville Longbottom. Harry's fingers tightened around his untouched drink. He should have left, should have stood and walked out before Neville could see him. But his limbs felt heavy, rooted. Neville spotted him in an instant. There was no hesitation as he crossed the room, no moment of doubt. He pulled back his hood, revealing a face older, lined with responsibility, yet still unmistakably Neville, the same boy who had once stood with a sword in his hands and defied death itself. "We are a hard man to find," Neville said, sitting across from him without invitation. Harry didn't respond. He simply stared at the fire, hoping that if he ignored this moment long enough, it would pass like a dream. But Neville wasn't here for dreams. "They need you, Harry," he said after a long silence. His voice was quiet but steady. "The world hasn't healed, it's still broken. And no matter how much you want to pretend you don't belong in it anymore, you do." Harry let out a slow breath, his fingers loosening from around the tankard. "I'm not who they need." Neville leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "You think any of us are? Do you think I am? I wake up every day wondering if I'm enough for the world that's left behind. But we keep going, Harry. We don't get to disappear." The word struck harder than Harry wanted to admit. He had thought about it more times than he could count. What it would mean to return. To walk through the doors of Hogwarts again, to see the faces of those who had continued on without him. To accept that he had run away. Neville stood, but he didn't press further. He simply reached into his cloak and placed something on the table. A single photograph, old, faded, but painfully familiar. The faces of Ron and Hermione stared back at him. A moment captured before the war had stolen everything, before the weight of destiny had crushed them, the last time they had all truly been happy. "I'm not telling you what to do," Neville said, his voice softer now. "I just thought you might need a reminder of where you belong." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Harry alone in the dim glow of the firelight. The photograph lay in front of him. His fingers hovered over it, unwilling to touch, afraid that if he did, it would shatter something inside him that he had fought so hard to bury. For years he had told himself that he was nothing without the war, that without a battle to fight, Harry Potter didn't exist anymore. But maybe Neville was right. Maybe there was still something left. The fire crackled, the sound filling the silence. And for the first time in 3 years, Harry didn't look away.